Why, hello there, everyone. If you did not already know, Netflix had announced a few months ago that they're producing a live-action Gundam movie, and when they originally announced this, a lot of people were super hesitant about it, right? I know most people aren't too optimistic about this. I can't blame them because whenever it comes to live-action adaptations of, popular franchises that are either animated or video games, the track record is not too great. However, I'm kind of 50-50 on this movie so far just because I think it could be okay. But anyways, today we got the first glimpse of the actual direction of the movie because up until now they've only been talking about the movie, right? But today we got a first look at the concept art. It doesn't really strike me as concept art, but I guess they're using it as concept art, right? Because usually when I think of concept art, I think of much more like painterly looking things, like sort of more impressionist. This looks like it was, digitally made, but I guess that could still serve as concept art. But anyways, I think the most surprising thing about this is that this is obviously not the RX-78-2, because I don't remember if they ever explicitly mentioned that the movie is going to be a remake or a retelling of the original Gundam, but I would assume so, right? Because if you were going to make a live-action Gundam movie, or if I were to make a live-action Gundam movie, I think most people would go with a sort of retelling, like a condensed retelling of the original Mobile Suit Gundam, right? In which case, it would be natural to assume that you're using the RX-78-2 because it was the first Gundam, right? It's the most recognizable. But no, in this case, it looks like they're going for something more or less original, which I'm actually happy about because now it means even if the movie ends up sucking, we're at least getting a new model kit, right? We're at least getting a new Gundam design, which will inevitably have its own model kit. So even if the movie sucks, I hope we get a good model kit for it. So the main differences between this and the RX-78-2, well, for one, the head design, it's way more round. This strikes me as much more akin to the Victory Gundam. This head looks way more like the Victory Gundam's head than the RX-78-2, mostly because of just how round it is. Actually, the sort of, like the helmet part, the rim of the, quote, helmet that's hanging above the eyes here, it sort of makes me think of Turn A Gundam, just in this one little specific spot, right? But the overall head silhouette really does look more like the Victory Gundam than the RX-78-2. So, I'm sure they looked at that as influence, right? Another thing is that the vents here are kind of thin, and they look like they are sticking straight out in front rather than them being angled down, right? Because the RX-78-2, the vents sort of angled downwards and are taller, but in this case, it looks like they're shooting straight out in front, which again is kind of more like the Victory Gundam. So I find it really surprising that, it could just be a coincidence, but if they really are using the Victory Gundam as inspiration for this design, I'm really surprised they went with that because Victory Gundam isn't even really one of the more popular series, right? Something that strikes me as very strange, in a bad way. In this case, it's bad, right? Like, I kind of, I like the sort of Victory Gundam helmet silhouette. But something I don't like is, why are the beam saber handles so hilariously huge? Like, look how thick those are. If this Gundam were to draw the beam saber and hold these handles, it would be like holding a giant crayon. Like, it would look like a little kid holding one of those giant crayons, right? With all of their fingers. So that looks a little strange. Maybe they'll change that when it comes to actually... Maybe they'll change this when it comes to the actual design in the movie, right? Because things always change from concept art to the actual movie. Maybe when they actually start... I'm assuming they're using CG for the mobile suits, right? Obviously. So I'm assuming that once they start 3D modeling this thing and having it hold the beam sabers, they might realize how absurdly thick these are, and then they might thin those down. Another thing that's apparent is that for some reason, it's missing a lot of the paneling, right? Like, I guess, like if it weren't asymmetrical here, I would sort of go with the assumption that they wanted to do a more, quote, realistic look by having a lot of the hydraulics exposed and things like that. Like with the waist and the arms here. But because it's asymmetrical, it makes me think that this literally must be a scene in which it was like being worked on, or maybe this Gundam wasn't finished being built, right? And then the main character has to get in it and pilot it, or it was in some kind of hangar, right? Because this kind of looks like a hangar, so maybe it was being worked on. Like it was either being built or it was being partially disassembled for maintenance, right? But I'm assuming this concept art was made specifically for a specific scene, right? And they obviously wanted to capture like a specific silhouette. The fire in this hangar, the fire in this room makes me think that they also took some inspiration from Gundam Unicorn, because seeing a Gundam get out of a hangar while it's on fire really makes me think of the scene from Unicorn in which Bonager gets in the Unicorn Gundam, right? Because when Bonager gets in the Unicorn Gundam for the first time, the whole place is on fire. And that's just a really good moment to have music kick in, right? So I would bet that this is the scene in which the main character enters and launches in the Gundam for the first time. If you just heard white noise kick in, that's my air conditioning that just kicked in. So back to the paneling that's apparently missing. So obviously it's missing a shoulder pad here. I don't know what's going on with the hand here. It looks like it's either holding something, which is pointing towards the camera and making a really weird silhouette, or it's just like missing a hand. What's weird is you can make out the hand really easily here, but not at all here. Right? But it looks like it keeps going down, so like maybe there's actually a beam rifle here. That's actually probably it now that I look at it more. Like maybe this is the back of the beam rifle, and then this is the top and it goes down, and what we see right here is the sight, right? If they're trying to go for the more cartoony beam rifle design from the original. Although I'd be surprised if they went with that kind of design, if they're not even using an RX-78-2 design for the Gundam itself. So I fully expect this shoulder here and the arms to get covered up by panels when it's fully complete, like for the majority of the screen time in the movie. However, the waist around here, I'm wondering, I could definitely see them leaving the hydraulics exposed on the waist here, because that sort of looks like Iron-Blooded Orphans. That looks like it's influenced by the mech designs in Iron-Blooded Orphans, because in IBO, Iron-Blooded Orphans, the mechs have very small waists with hydraulics exposed on the sides, so that way when they do like an ab crunch, for example, or when they twist, you can see the hydraulics move. So I could see them going for something like that, right? Because if you were to exclude the hydraulics from this silhouette, you could see the waist go really small here. What's weird is that I think, canonically speaking, I don't think any of the Gundam designs would actually look like this under the panels, right? Because in the RX-78-2's case, for example, you know that the middle waist part is made out of the core fighter, right? And if the core fighter had the paneling ripped off, I don't think it would look like this inside. But this could just be its own continuity, right? In core fighter, it's not the RX-78-2, so they probably don't even acknowledge core fighters or anything like that. So that's probably not a big deal. Someone was replying to this tweet with the FMV game footage. That's gold. I think those were my main observations. I just sort of wanted to share my thoughts on the direction of this, because obviously, whether the movie ends up being good or bad, I'm still definitely interested in seeing how it turns out, right? And so I wanted to talk about this earlier, but like I said, it was only the announcement, and so there was really not much to talk about. But now that we have an actual image, which is somewhat indicative of the direction for the movie, it was finally something to talk about and share. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you think about this design, or if there was some aspect here that I overlooked, and let me know if you have any other ideas about the movie or anything like that in the comments. So with all that said, I will see you all later, so bye for now.